Good afternoon and welcome back to the channel. Today we are engaging in a conversation that is fundamentally about the soul of this nation. We are not merely discussing a military procurement contract or the technical specifications of an airframe. We are talking about the future of the True North. We are talking about the backbone of our national sovereignty and the legacy we are going to leave for the next generation of Canadians. This is a story about dignity. It is a story about economics. And quite frankly, it is a story about whether Canada chooses to stand on its own 2 feet or whether we simply bow our heads and accept the dictates of a foreign power, no matter how close an ally they have been in the past. The situation we face right now is unprecedented in modern diplomatic history. We are witnessing a high-stakes geopolitical drama playing out on our tarmacs and in our parliament, with the security of North America and the wallet of the Canadian taxpayer firmly in the crosshairs. It is time to cut through the diplomatic fog and speak plainly about what is happening. The current administration in Washington, led by Donald Trump and represented by Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, is attempting to strong-arm Canada. They are presenting an ultimatum that is as stark as it is insulting. They are telling us that the price of admission to a friendly trade relationship, the price of avoiding punishing tariffs on our steel, aluminum, and lumber, is the immediate and unquestioning purchase of the American F-35 fighter jet fleet. You know the history of this file. It has been a political football for over a decade. Our government, after years of prudent hesitation and necessary debate, finally acknowledged that our aging fleet of CF-18 seconds needs to be replaced. They placed an initial order for 16 of these American jets as a stopgap measure. But as the geopolitical landscape shifted, and as the tone coming from Washington became increasingly transactional and hostile, Prime Minister Carney and other leaders rightly decided to hit the pause button. They dared to ask a question that every responsible homeowner or business owner asks before a major purchase. Is there a better deal out there? Is there a product that actually serves our specific needs better? The moment Canada showed this hesitation, the reaction from the United States was swift and aggressive. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra stood up at a conference just a few days ago and effectively laid down the law. His message was not one of partnership, it was one of coercion. He implied directly that if we want successful trade talks, we must buy their jets. If we do not buy their jets, we can forget about a stable trade deal. We need to call this what it is. It is blackmail. It is a bullying tactic that has no place between friends who share the longest undefended border in the world and who share the solemn duty of defending this continent through NORAD. But this pressure campaign forces us to ask a critical question, one that every Canadian between the ages of 40 and 65 who remembers the golden era of Canadian peacekeeping and diplomacy should consider. Should Canada allow its most critical defense procurement, a decision that will shape our military for 40 years, to be hijacked by a temporary trade threat? The alternative to the American pressure is not a vacuum. It is a very compelling strategic partnership that was presented to us just this past week. We saw the King and Queen of Sweden, accompanied by their Deputy Prime Minister and the President of Saab, visit our capital. They did not come with threats. They came with a proposal. They are offering the Gripen jet, a piece of engineering marvel that is efficient, cost-effective, and battle-tested by nations that face the exact same threats we do. The Americans and their lobbyists will tell you that the F-35 is the only option. They claim it is the epitome of air superiority and that without it, Canada cannot integrate with NATO or NORAD. They scream about interoperability, suggesting that if we fly Swedish jets, we are somehow breaking the chain of command. But we need to look at the facts, not the marketing brochures. We need credible information to cut through the noise. I want to draw your attention to a vital analysis that appeared in the Ottawa Citizen just a couple of days ago, titled Canada's Battle of the Fighter Jets, written by David Puglisi, an award-winning investigative reporter who has covered this file for decades. He did the homework that the lobbyists hope you won't do. What does the actual data say about the F-35? Supporters call it a technological marvel, and perhaps on paper, it is. But in reality, it is an aircraft dogged by persistent failures. The costs to maintain this plane and keep it airworthy are astronomical. This isn't just Canadian skepticism. This is coming from inside the US government. During a Senate hearing back in October, Republican Senator Roger Wicker stated clearly that the readiness rates of the F-35 fleet continue to fall short of Pentagon goals. Let that sink in. The most expensive, advanced fighter in the world is too often sitting idle on the runway because it is broken, glitching, or awaiting parts. A jet that cannot fly cannot defend the Arctic. For a country like Canada, with our vast, unforgiving territory, reliability is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Furthermore, the United States has flagged new problems with the specific F-35 variant Canada plans to buy. The weapons capabilities are not what were promised. To fix these deficiencies, the program is currently running about $6 billion over budget and is approximately 5 years behind schedule. I ask you, would you buy a car that is 5 years late, over budget, and prone to breaking down simply because the salesman threatened to slash your tires if you didn't? I don't think so. The argument that we cannot operate two types of aircraft is historical nonsense. The Royal Canadian Air Force has a long and proud history of operating mixed fleets. The Gripen is fully NATO compatible. It is already being used in exercises alongside American jets by other nations, and they communicate and fight together just fine. The compatibility issue is a myth designed to scare taxpayers. Some analysts suggest the real reason for American panic is fear. They are terrified that if Canada, a G7 nation and a top-tier NATO ally, buys the Gripen and proves it is more effective and efficient than the F-35, it would shatter the global sales pitch for the American jet. It would expose the F-35 as a bloated, overpriced project. But let's move beyond the hardware and talk about the invisible chains that come with this deal. Even if we buy the American jets, we are buying a black box. The technology, the source code, and the software will remain the exclusive property of the US government. This means they can decide to withhold critical upgrades. They can decide to charge us double for software patches. They are effectively holding our Air Force hostage, and we must not be naive. We cannot assume that the people in the Trump administration or any future America First administration wouldn't use that leverage. They have already proven they will use tariffs on national security grounds against us. Why wouldn't they use software codes? This brings us to the most chilling aspect of this entire debate: control. I have heard the arguments from the pro-American camp citing military cohesion, but then you look at the warnings from people who actually know the system. Retired General Tom Lawson, the former Chief of Defense Staff, has warned against saddling the RCAF with two fleets. However, we must place his words in the proper context. General Lawson retired and went to work as a consultant for Lockheed Martin for the last 6 years. He is on the payroll of the company selling the jet. We must weigh his warning against his financial interests. Contrast that with the perspective of retired Lieutenant General Evan Blondin. This is the man who originally recommended the F-35 purchase when he was in command. He was the champion of this jet, but he has looked at the current reality and changed his mind. He now says the purchase should no longer go forward. He admits it is wrong. Why the change of heart? Because he sees the trap. He notes that defense analysts are deeply worried about the amount of control the Americans retain. They control the software. They own the parts. Even the spare parts stored in Canadian warehouses would not legally become Canadian property until they are installed on the aircraft. General Blondin states the simple reality: no country can operate these F-35 seconds without the United States' explicit, ongoing consent. This arrangement might have been acceptable 20 years ago when the geopolitical order was stable. But General Blondin points to the rhetoric coming from Trump: talk of annexing Canada, talk of seizing Greenland. He concludes, and I wholeheartedly agree, that you simply cannot trust an administration with those instincts not to use the F-35's technical dependency as a leash to control Canadian foreign policy. Some of you might say, well, Trump won't be around forever. That is a dangerous gamble. First, there are no guarantees about his tenure or influence. Second, the movement he represents, isolationist, transactional, aggressive nationalism, is not going away. If he is replaced by a J.D. Vance or a Marco Rubio, the policy remains the same. We cannot base a 40-year defense strategy on the hope that American politics will return to the polite norms of the 1,990 seconds. Those days are gone. We must make decisions based on the cold, hard reality of today. The issue of control is not theoretical. We have a smoking gun. Look at what happened to Denmark in March. Denmark is a loyal NATO ally and an F-35 partner. Yet, American officials entered Danish stockpiles, took spare parts designated for Danish jets, and shipped them to Israel to support the conflict there. The Danish government admitted they had no way to prevent this. It violated their own foreign policy and left their own fleet vulnerable. Rasmus Jarlov, a parliamentarian on the Danish Defense Committee, publicly expressed regret for selecting the F-35, warning that the US effectively undermined Denmark's national defense. That incident is a flashing red light for Canada. If they can strip Denmark of its parts, they can strip us. The problem extends into our own backyard and our own budget. The Auditor General, Karen Hogan, confirmed in her June 10 report that American officials have already warned the Canadian military that our existing facilities are inadequate for the F-35. The U.S. Program Office is insisting on a total redesign of the hangars and security facilities at Cold Lake, Alberta, and Bagotville, Quebec. Why? To protect U.S. secret technology. This demand is adding massive additional costs to you, the taxpayer. And here is the kicker. The Department of National Defense will need to build temporary facilities because the new U.S. mandated infrastructure won't be completed until 2031. Think about the absurdity of that. We are rushing to buy jets that we cannot properly house for another 6 years. Our pilots will be operating out of temporary tents while we pour concrete to satisfy American security paranoia. This is a profound infringement on our military planning autonomy. We are a nation that is finally waking up to the need for a robust defense. The recent budget passed in Parliament confirms a renewed and larger commitment to our military, which is a positive step. We see the threats. We know the Russians are testing our Arctic defenses. We know the Chinese are interested in the Northwest Passage. Sweden sees this too. Their delegation didn't just talk about sales, they talked about northern sovereignty. They discussed a defense partnership specifically tailored to the Arctic. Sweden faces the exact same Russian threat on their border. They designed the Gripen specifically to operate in freezing conditions from short, icy roads without the need for pristine, heated hangars. Operationally, for the defense of the Canadian North, the Swedish philosophy makes infinite sense. Now, let's address the economic leverage, because this is where the Americans usually win the argument. They always dangle the jobs. They say that Canadian firms currently supply parts for the F-35, and if we buy the jet, those contracts continue. But can we really hang our hat on that promise? Donald Trump has explicitly told manufacturers that he wants all manufacturing jobs brought back to the United States. He has done this with Carrier, with Ford, and with John Deere. A year from now, he could simply sign an executive order demanding that F-35 parts be made in Ohio or Texas, stripping those contracts from Alberta or Ontario. There are no guarantees in America first. On the other side of the ledger, look at the offer from Saab. During their visit, the Swedish government and Saab executives put a concrete number on the table: 10,000 Canadian jobs. This is not about maintaining a few supply contracts. They are proposing that the Gripen jets be built here in Canada. They would establish a factory, assembly lines, and parts plants on Canadian soil. This brings back memories of a time when Canada had its own aerospace ambitions, before the cancellation of the Avro Aero. This is a chance to reclaim that industrial heritage. Furthermore, Saab stated that this Canadian plant would become a global hub. If we sign this partnership, the Canadian facility would be responsible for fulfilling export contracts to other nations. For instance, Ukraine has ordered jets from Saab. Those jets could be built by Canadian workers in Canadian factories. This is a sustainability impact that the F-35 deal simply cannot match. It shifts Canada from being a vulnerable client to being a core manufacturer. It buys us industrial sovereignty. It ensures that we have the know-how and the capacity to maintain our own fleet without begging Washington for permission or parts. I absolutely resent the tone taken by officials like Ambassador Hoekstra. Walking into our house and saying, "Nice economy you have there, would be a shame if something happened to it," is the language of a protection racket, not a partner. There was a respectful way to do this. They could have offered incentives. They could have said, "We know you are concerned about tariffs. If we can secure this defense partnership, we will eliminate the tariffs on softwood, lumber, and steel, reducing them to zero." That would be a negotiation. That would be treating Canada with respect. But that is not how this administration operates. Their idea of negotiation is total submission. And that is why so many Canadians, perhaps you included, are skeptical about the value of any trade deal signed under duress. At some point, we need a government that looks the American administration in the eye and says, "No, we will do what is best for Canada. I acknowledge that there will be consequences. A petulant president may lash out." But do we fall prey to fear? Do we sign a check for billions of dollars for a product that might sit broken on the runway just to buy a few months of silence from the White House? That makes no strategic or financial sense. It is a decision that will be costly either way, but one path leads to independence and the other leads to permanent servitude. We are standing at a crossroads. We have lobbyists pushing the American product. We have the very general who recommended the F-35 now screaming stop. We have documented evidence of the F-35's poor readiness rates flagged by American senators. We have the issue of the flaws that still need to be worked out, factory defects that we would be inheriting. This is not as simple as Pete Hoekstra makes it out to be. The idea that what America says goes is no longer the rule of law in international relations. The respect for the United States' role in global defense has been tarnished by their own erratic behavior. I do not envy the decision our leaders have to make, but I have confidence that if they listen to the people and if they look at the hard facts rather than the political threats, they will see the truth. They need to come out at the right end of this history. They need to do what is best for Canada's long-term defense and our long-term economy. That may involve telling our American friends that this time we are going a different way. We cannot hold our breath and hope that the Americans will become nicer next year. We must build our own shelter now. That is the mandate of a truly sovereign nation. Thank you for being with us today and allowing us to facilitate this critical discussion. It is absolutely vital that we, as engaged citizens, keep the pressure on our representatives to stand up for our sovereignty. If you are watching this on YouTube, please hit that notification bell and pass this video on to your friends and family. Your support through your subscriptions really helps us carry on this work, bringing you the information the mainstream media often glosses over so that we can all make informed decisions. The fate of our defense budget, potentially $50 billion over the life of this program, and our trade future hangs in the balance. We are looking at a deal that is massive. The initial purchase of 88 jets is just the down payment. The sustainment costs are where the real money is and where the real control lies. A significant portion of that $50 billion would flow directly into American companies, supporting American high-tech jobs, while we pay the bill. The sheer size of this financial commitment means we cannot afford to buy a plane that is often grounded or one whose operational life is dictated by the political whims of a foreign power. Think about the implications of the US controlling the software again. The F-35 is inherently dependent on a complex global logistics system called ALIS, the Autonomic Logistics Information System. The US owns this. They manage it. If Canada were ever involved in a conflict, or perhaps a domestic sovereignty enforcement operation in the Arctic that the US disagreed with, they possess the technical ability to cripple our fleet by simply withholding a software patch or denying access to the ALIS network. Is that acceptable for securing the Northwest Passage? Is that how we defend against Russian incursions? Sweden is offering something different. They are offering to build a deep partnership. Their expertise in dispersed logistics, meaning the ability to land on a highway, refuel, rearm, and take off again in minutes with a small crew of conscripts is arguably much more relevant to Canada's needs than the US focus on massive, integrated global air warfare. We need a guard dog for the North, not a pit bull for foreign interventions. Let's be honest about the military logic. US officials argue that seamless integration is vital, but the Gripen has proven its interoperability. When the Canadian government decided to pause the procurement months ago, they were worried about performance. They were right to be worried. The current order for 16 jets was a stopgap that has become a liability. We have an opportunity to get off this carousel of dependency. When we look at the financial side again, I want to re-emphasize the job commitment from Saab. 10,000 Canadian jobs. This is a game changer. It means we are buying sovereign industrial capacity. We are not just buying a jet, we are buying a future for aerospace workers in Quebec, in Ontario, and across the nation. This is economic defense. The US offer is based on the precarious continuation of current contracts. The Saab offer is a guarantee of domestic manufacturing, a much harder guarantee for any future US government to unravel. Consider also the sheer expense of the stealth technology. While advanced, many experts argue that for Canada's primary mission, Arctic sovereignty and NORAD response, the extreme stealth capabilities of the F-35 are overkill or perhaps even irrelevant. With the advent of advanced Russian and Chinese long-range radars, stealth is a diminishing asset. We would be paying a massive premium for a feature that is constantly under threat of becoming obsolete, all while dealing with the logistical nightmare and high cost of maintenance that comes with advanced stealth coatings. Are we paying for a capability we need, or are we paying for the prestige of owning the world's most expensive toy? This decision must be made by weighing the integrity of the deal itself. When the US side resorts to threats tying trade agreements to defense sales, it immediately compromises the integrity of their product. If the F-35 truly is the superior jet for Canada, why does Washington need to resort to bullying? A truly superior product sold by a reliable ally would sell itself based on merit. It wouldn't need Ambassador Hoekstra to threaten our lumber industry. We need a stable platform that the RCAF can operate and maintain without constantly fighting a political battle for updates. We need a fleet that we can deploy quickly from our northern bases, not one that demands expensive, custom-built, US-mandated hangars that are years behind schedule. The reports of the Canadian military being warned by US officials about inadequate facilities are damning. We are talking about critical infrastructure that won't be ready until 2031. What are our pilots supposed to do for the next 6 years? This lack of foresight is costing us time, money, and readiness. The core of the issue, what should resonate with every Canadian who loves this country, is this. We are being asked to buy dependency. We are being asked to surrender a significant portion of our future military decision-making to a foreign government that has, under its current leadership, demonstrated a profound lack of respect for our alliance. The moment we sign that F-35 contract, we are locked into a relationship where the US can turn the lights off on our defense whenever it suits their agenda. The Gripen comes from a neutral nation that shares our values and our geography. They are not trying to annex us. They are offering to build with us. So, let's demand accountability from our government. They have been presented with an intriguing offer from Saab, one that Minister Joly admitted requires more exploration. That exploration must be exhaustive. It cannot simply be a justification to go back to the F-35 deal out of fear. It must be an honest, clear-eyed weighing of the pros and cons. And right now, the cons list for the F-35 is long. It involves the very integrity of our national defense posture. We are a nation committed to defense. We need the tools to match that commitment. We cannot afford a jet that sits idle. We cannot afford a jet that is controlled remotely. And we certainly cannot afford a jet that comes with a trade war as a bonus feature. We need the best long-term deal operationally, economically, and most importantly, solely for Canada. The time for being the docile, accommodating neighbor is over. The time for Canada to stand up and do what is best for Canada, regardless of the consequences threatened by a petulant ally, is now. This is our defense, our money, and our future. What are you going to demand of your representatives? I want to thank you deeply for joining this conversation. It is your engagement that drives the algorithm and gets this message out to more Canadians who care about our future. Please scroll down to the comment section right now. I want to read your thoughts on this. A huge thank you to everyone who has already subscribed and helped build this community of patriots. Do you believe Canada should risk a trade fight to secure a more autonomous, cost-effective fighter jet option? Does the promise of 10,000 new Canadian jobs outweigh the risk of disappointing our southern ally? And looking ahead to 2031, what should be our top priority for defending the Arctic? Technology or political independence? If you found value in this analysis, if you believe that Canadian sovereignty is worth fighting for, please leave a comment below saying "Stand guard for Canada" so I know you are with us. Thank you for watching, thank you for caring about this country, and stay vigilant. We will see you in the next video.